Last year, I played Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary for the first time. I was not impressed. The Anniversary graphics were too much of a divergence from the original, especially the lighting and shadows. They changed the mood and feel at many key moments through the game. I made a video on it, and it got a lot of views. It also got a lot of comments. Many people agreed with me, and many people disagreed, but one sentiment kept popping up. Halo 2 Anniversary was different. I hadn't played Halo 2 in nearly as long as the original, close to 20 years, and I was so excited to give it a shot, now with some high expectations due to all the comments on my previous video. And boy, did this game deliver. Before we get started, I decided I want to use this video to convince you of something. I think Halo 2 is the best game in the original series, and the Anniversary graphics make it even better. And it's probably the best game of the entire franchise. I haven't played anything past Reach, but something tells me the more recent games aren't quite up to snuff. The first thing that struck me is the remastered cutscenes. They are absolutely beautiful, though they could have toned down the lens flare. Only a little was lost from what I remember as a kid. The cutscenes used to have Master Chief or the Arbiter using the weapon they were carrying in-game prior to the scene beginning. But now that all cinematics are totally pre-rendered, it's no longer possible. A small price to pay for such a stark improvement. One small thing though. It feels like the cutscenes rush through the dialogue a little bit. I may be remembering them wrong, but the amount of time between dialogue strings seems too short in the Anniversary Edition. However, I did a comparison between two of the same scenes and didn't really notice a difference.
Sir, permission to leave the station.
For what purpose, Master Chief?
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
Permission granted.
A ship that size, not on your own.
Sir, permission to leave the station.
For what purpose, Master Chief?
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
Permission granted.
Despite this, I couldn't shake the feeling throughout the entire game. I don't, in all honesty, know why. The visuals everywhere in the game are just incredible. It's a massive step up from not just Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, but the original Halo 2 itself. In my Halo Anniversary video, I talk about why the updated graphics don't work. And after making that video, I fell into a bit of a Halo content rabbit hole. I stumbled across a video by Late Night Gaming that explains why Halo 2 didn't look as good as it was supposed to. I'm not going into detail because the video is right there, link in the description. He explains it better than I ever could, but essentially, the developers couldn't get their intended lighting and shadow system to work on the original Xbox. When I played Halo Anniversary, the visuals frustrated me. It was hard not to focus on them because they were just so off. Yes, I could have switched back to the original graphics at any time, but I wanted to experience the new visuals. But Halo 2 Anniversary's updated graphics not only enhance the experience, but are able to realize the original vision of Halo 2's developers. The graphics didn't bother me, and because of that, I could really focus on the game. And it is so much better than I remember. So this video is now a Halo 2 retrospective with better graphics. Hi, so if you've enjoyed this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps a lot, and I plan to do every Halo game in the series along with many other series as I explore my childhood games, modern games, and other games I've played over the years. Alright, let's continue. Despite the fact that you play as Master Chief throughout half of Halo 2, the Arbiter is pretty clearly the main character. He has a defined and evolved character arc, while the Master Chief doesn't have any character development at all. He really doesn't need any. Chief's conflict is external, while Arbiter's is both external and internal. As such, Halo 2 begins with a trial. The trial of Thel 'Vadami, the elite commander who presided over the Covenant fleet that attacked and glassed Reach. When I was a kid, I always thought glassing a planet meant covering as much of the surface as possible with glass. Turns out it just means making the planet uninhabitable via plasma-powered climate destruction. Thel 'Vadami and his fleet then chased the Pillar of Autumn to Halo Installation 04, where he failed to stop Master Chief from destroying the ring. Thel is found guilty and is escorted from the trial room, and the Prophet of Truth references the Great Journey.
Soon the Great Journey shall begin. But when it does, the weight of your heresy will stay your feet, and you shall be left behind.
We shift to Earth, where the inverse is happening. While Thel is being admonished and stripped of his rank for his failure, Chief is being honored and rewarded for his success. It's an intentional dichotomy between the two, because they are, in every way, opposites. It's great writing and framing, and Halo 2 keeps coming back to this, leading to an infamous moment later in the game. But now, it's finally time for gameplay. Right off the bat, it definitely feels better than Halo Anniversary. Obviously, I'm playing with mouse and keyboard, but I distinctly remember a better feeling on the controller as well. There's a snappiness to Halo 2's controls that just wasn't present in the first game. Dual wielding is introduced early on, but I didn't find it very useful in my recent playthrough. I remember loving it as a kid simply because of the cool factor, but it's clunky, especially on mouse and keyboard. There was really only one weapon I liked dual wielding, the Brute Plasma Rifle. We'll talk about that later. Dual wielding wasn't included in Halo 3, so perhaps the developers felt the same way. It may have been an experiment that just didn't pan out, which is okay. Cairo Station is a really solid first level. It's pretty standard, but has a few unique sections. The low grav areas are really cool, and the sound design is on point. Though I'm not sure it would sound like anything at all in reality. A lot of new weapons are introduced. The battle rifle is my favorite weapon in Halo 2. I really enjoy that I can pseudo-snipe with it while still being able to use it at mid and short range relatively effectively. On the other hand, I don't really like the SMG. It never felt great to play as a kid, and still doesn't now. It shreds shields really fast, but I don't get its purpose outside of that. Cairo Station's ending cutscene is one of the most iconic moments in the original Halo series, and was actually a huge part of the game's marketing. It's filled with incredible lines, as is most of the game.
For a brick, he flew pretty good.
Chief, get inside. Gear up. We're taking this fight to the surface.
Outskirts felt like such a big deal when I was a kid, because we were finally on Earth. Not only that, but the Covenant had never been here before. It felt like a big moment, a serious moment. And the level was surprisingly hard for me. I died a few times simply due to the overwhelming amount of Covenant, especially the bugs in combination with sniping jackals. The beam rifle was a treat to use. I never bothered with it as a kid, but I really liked it in my recent playthrough. It's a little inconsistent, the battery runs out quick, and it can be tough to aim with precision, but it's satisfying to use and has a really great sound effect. The hotel scene. It's obviously meant to be a flashlight tutorial, but it's also a bit unsettling. The question I had when walking through the darkness is, will the flashlight mean anything in this game? Considering what happened with Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary. And while it's not a major feature, the flashlight is genuinely helpful at certain points throughout the game. The highway tunnel section is extremely nostalgic. There are so many great lines, moments, encounters. The Covenant mobilizing with their carriers and the Scarab's beam blasting through the ceiling are two scenes that are deeply rooted in my memory. Which leads to Metropolis, the final level of this chapter, and we start with a scorpion.
Oh, I know what the ladies like.
Tank gameplay feels a lot better than in Halo Anniversary. The barrel swivel is a bit snappier while still feeling like it has realistic physics behind it. The bridge makes for a fun gauntlet, but the tank makes it feel a little bit easy. I guess that's the point. We navigate the city streets and blast everything in our path in order to rescue trapped Marines. Climbing the building stairs is another really nostalgic moment for whatever reason. And realizing I was going to board the Scarab felt so cool and unique as a kid. It was uncommon for games in that era to allow for active fighting on a moving platform like that, and the weird physics around it are evidence of such. There are a lot of moving platform sections in Halo 2, but this one is definitely the coolest. Most of the others are not as exciting. The Scarab section is just as difficult as I remember. I died quite a few times and had to work out strategies to effectively use my more powerful weapons in a contained space with a lot of enemies. There were some very dangerous elites, and I'm realizing that even regular melee attacks from head-on can one-shot me. Keep in mind, this is on normal. This was also my first opportunity to use the energy sword. It was my favorite weapon as a kid, but I wasn't as much of a fan this time around. It's powerful, but there's another weapon later that provides basically the same power with other utility as well. But I still love the lunge mechanic. And, of course, there's a crazy cutscene at the end of the level. I sure hope the city was evacuated because it's gone. Now found guilty, Thel is dragged through the Covenant mothership in capital city, High Charity, and publicly tortured. He is sentenced to execution. A new enemy type, the Brutes, drag him. They even reference a desire to eat him rather than have the council decide his fate. I mean, that's a big yikes, and it hints at racial tension within the Covenant, foreshadowing the coming conflict. But the prophets have something else in mind. Instead of executing Thel outright, they instead bestow upon him the title of Arbiter, with the intention of sending him to his death in suicidal missions. The first of which is to investigate and eliminate a known heretic.
One who would subvert our faith and incite rebellion against the High Council.
It's interesting how the elite commander treats Arbiter with respect and as a friend, but then immediately turns around and says Arbiter's life doesn't matter to him.
Nothing ever will. You are the Arbiter, the will of the prophets. But these are my elites. Their lives matter to me, yours does not. That makes two of us.
I wonder if this is blind faith to the Covenant, or if it's more along the lines of resentment. Resentment for bringing shame upon the elite race. This particular elite becomes a staunch ally as the game progresses. Onto the level. This is such a unique zone. As a kid, I always wondered where exactly this was happening. What kind of station are we on? Is it a research facility suspended over a gas giant? Is it a containment zone for something we'll see shortly? Well, I looked it up. It's actually a gas mine, and it is positioned right next to the Halo installation 04 from the first game, which makes perfect sense since that's presumably where the heretic organized his following and they had 343 Guilty Spark in the facility with them. Halo 2 Anniversary's graphics have the exact opposite effect of Combat Evolved Anniversary's. Everything is much darker, to the point where it's difficult to see at times. But hey, it enhances the experience, so I'm not complaining. I'm really enjoying the carbine. I'm quite drawn to weapons with single shots or bursts and access to a scope. I spent a lot of the game just using a sniper or beam rifle, even in mid-range combat. The heretic uses a Banshee to move from one wing to another, and we follow. Alright, this is honestly just so cool. The Banshee section of this level is very memorable, but they really took liberties with the music, and it is such a vibe. Which brings us to the Oracle, and the reintroduction to our old friends, the Flood. The developers really nailed the sense of horror surrounding the Flood with the first room, just like in Halo Combat Evolved. You can see their silhouettes, and you can see them slaughtering the heretics, but you can't see what they are yet. Your NPC comrades make comments, they know the smell of the Flood, and you as a player know their shrieks. Which brings us to yet another elevator scene, though this one is far less iconic and the start of a trend with Halo 2. Wave-based gauntlets on slowly moving platforms. A low point for many of the levels. They are not very fun or engaging, but in this case I had fun with the wacky energy sword physics. I found a panel that started a cutscene I have no memory of. It turns out there are secret cutscenes throughout the game, perhaps one in each level. They expand on the backstory of the Covenant. Upon more research, I also found out there are secret cutscenes in Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary that I didn't even know about and never found. I may have to go back and find some of them. The heretic leader escapes to safety, leaving Arbiter and the elites to deal with the Flood and face the gas storm. Arbiter decides to cut the cable suspending the station above the planet.
The cable. I'm going to cut it.
I always loved doing this as a kid. It's just such a cool concept. The Anniversary Edition really makes the following section better. The improved visuals and lighting make it much clearer that the station is in total freefall, and it's moving fast. And then we arrive at the heretic leader's doorstep.
Arbiter, I would rather die by your hand than let the prophets lead me to slaughter. Who has taught you these lies?
He really demonstrates how much faith he's lost in the prophets and their great journey. It's a dark and foreboding moment. Anyway, the boss fight is just as easy as I remember. You just gotta lunge at him and slash a few times and he'll topple over. He might teleport once or twice, he might not. There are clones, but they're a non-issue. Once again, yes, this is normal. Did it on Legendary back in the day and it was harder, but not that hard. I'm not sure Bungie had figured out how to do boss fights in Halo games yet. With his mission complete, the Arbiter waits for transport provided by Tartarus. The way Tartarus treats 343 Guilty Spark, or the Oracle, really shows that he and the Brutes primarily follow the Prophet of Truth, rather than respect the Forerunner and their creations. It's all about the Great Journey. Nothing else seems to matter. Arbiter notices this, and presumably starts to question the Prophet's wisdom, the heretic's words sowing discord in his mind. Truth himself is very curious to me. He seems to singularly care about the Great Journey, and as we will see later, he has no regard for others. What's his angle? He is certainly the true villain of Halo 2, even though Tartarus is the main antagonist. In Amberclad follows the Covenant ship through the slip space rupture along with half the city, and finds itself adrift and facing an awe-inducing sight.
Cortana, what exactly am I looking at?
That is another Halo.
Say what?
Master Chief and the Marines drop from the ship and make an explosive entrance. Their goal? Investigate and depose of enemy Covenant forces. Of course. Delta Halo has a beautiful landscape. In the original Halo 2, it was meant to be reminiscent of Combat Evolved's first Halo level while showing off its fancy new visuals. That's actually realized with Halo 2 Anniversary. I also just noticed how the accompanying music shifts between the original and Anniversary as the graphics switch. Nice detail. As we progress through the level, there are again some very dark areas. This is a bit of a problem with the Scorpion because of the camera, but it doesn't really affect the game on normal. On Legendary, it might be a bigger problem. Speaking of vehicles, this level made me remember how much I love it when the ghosts freak out before they blow up. Delta Halo is definitely not one of the more memorable levels for me. Most of these areas felt pretty unfamiliar, with only the Prophet's song being deeply rooted in my memory. I do remember fighting the Elite Honor Guard, especially because I died and the Elite yelled,
The demon is dead! I killed it!
Another very memorable quote for me when I was a kid. Memorable in a sad way, of course, because I heard it a lot. Cortana makes a bit of a deal out of the Honor Guards, but they sure were easy to kill. I just sniped them without any issue. And the level ends with a great cutscene. Cortana explains that the Prophet of Regret is planning to activate Halo, and we need to stop him.
Are you sure?
I shall light this holy ring, release its cleansing flame, and burn a path into the divine beyond.
Pretty much.
We come to the gondola scene, and it's another iconic moving platform section. It has a gravitas that kind of makes up for the fact that you're sitting there waiting for the other gondola to arrive. It helps that you can use long-range weapons to get ahead of the fights, or end them before they even begin. And the underwater section of the level is very cool. There's a lot of mystique due to the improved visuals. As a kid, I could never really see what the large objects underwater were supposed to be. They were just solid masses of dark gray. But in the Anniversary Edition, there's a lot more lighting and detail. It's like an underwater city. What are these submerged structures doing on a Forerunner-built Halo installation, and why are they all destroyed? Those questions never popped up when I was a kid, because I didn't know what I was looking at. We fight through another gondola section and come across the central lake structure, a temple of sorts, and we get one of the coolest scenes in the game. I honestly didn't even remember this scene from when I was a kid, but it is masterfully communicated in Halo 2 Anniversary. It's just another example of a remaster done right.
That's the largest Covenant fleet I've ever seen. The largest anyone's ever seen. Get inside the temple and kill Regret before it can stop us.
The Regret boss fight was a little bit tricky, but not because of the boss himself. I really just needed to clear the room as much as possible so I could get close to Regret and punch him in the face. I repeatedly used the rocket launcher on him, not realizing I wasn't doing any damage because of the shield. despite the fact that he was crying out and making it seem like he was getting hit. The fight is more the room as a whole, which is fine, but I'm still not sure Bungie had figured out what they wanted a boss fight to look like yet. The Covenant fleet fires on the Chief's position, again showcasing that those in power, specifically Truth, don't care about their comrades, and Chief jumps into the lake to escape, but then he is pulled down into the depths by a mysterious entity. I obviously know what this is now, but I was so confused by this scene as a kid. It ends with some very dark foreshadowing. As we return to High Charity, we see the brutes forcibly removing armor from the elite honor guards. While they are not really resisting, we can see that the seeds of conflict have been planted. Truth seems significantly less emotionally and religiously driven than the other prophets. Despite his disdain for politics, he definitely appears to be the most power-hungry of the three. Does he think he will gain the most power from the Great Journey? It's not like he doesn't believe in it. Quite the contrary, it's about the only thing he seems to care about. Before we get into the next level, I want to pause and talk about the prophets themselves. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that each of their titles is a not-so-subtle allegory for the role they play in the narrative of Halo 2. First, we have Regret, who seems to be the least respected of the three. His name represents the poor choices he makes throughout the story, which lead to his death by Master Chief's hands, but also lead to further consequences later in the game and even into Halo 3. Regret leads an ill-informed attack on Earth, not even realizing that it's the homeworld of humanity. This leads to In Amber Clad following Regret's reckless slipspace rupture directly to another Halo installation, right after Master Chief destroyed the first one, something that cut deep into the faith of the Covenant. Mercy is the most devout of the three. He truly acts like a stereotypical prophet would, waxing poetic at all times and referring to the Forerunner and their creations with eloquence and respect. Mercy truly seems to view the Great Journey as salvation for all who have been devoted to the Covenant's gods, and I believe that he believes what he is saying is true. So, Truth. What gives? Truth is different. He's cold and calculating, far less focused on the faith-based nature of the Great Journey, and he's determined to continue his grip on power no matter who he has to betray along the way. Truth represents the actual nature of the Covenant's faith, of falsity. His callousness and dishonesty are what makes him the perfect candidate for the moniker of Truth. Pretty great writing, especially for a video game. Anyway, back to the level. Arbiter is dropped on an outer wall of the library, which ships cannot approach due to an energy shield covering the entire mountainous zone. The Forerunner clearly recognized how grave a decision activating the rings is and set arduous protocols and procedures along with staggering defenses to ensure they were not activated without cause. The Arbiter must now penetrate the defenses alone and power down the shields, which seems like a suicidal task. Hey, how about that?
Because the Arbiter are perilous, suicidal. You will die, as each Arbiter has before you.
The first part of the level mostly consists of Forerunner Sentinels, but the Flood quickly show themselves. It was nice to have a steady supply of Sentinel beams early on to tear through all the rotting husks. I also got to use the shotgun for the first time in Halo 2 Anniversary with the Arbiter, which is kinda neat. These weapons become less and less available as the level progresses, though, which makes for some pretty challenging encounters. Sacred Icon is definitely one of the harder levels. It's also a very tense level. There are a lot of enemies, with a lot of enemy variety as well, in both small claustrophobic areas and large overwhelming areas. It's got a freaky atmosphere, which is meant to be reminiscent of the library level from Combat Evolved, just a lot more chaotic. There is also a large mini-boss, which was, once again, way too easy. I just used the carbine to whittle it down. We move to another gondola section. It's a huge moving platform crossing a massive chasm between shield walls. This section is not very fun. It's way too slow and the platform is massive, making it hard to locate the enemies, especially considering there are multiple floors. Flood don't seem to like moving platforms either. They bug out a lot, getting caught in the walls and small alcoves. Thematically, this section is great, and it's cool that we're in a bit of a race with the humans. In practice though, not so much fun. Near the end of the level, we come to an open area with the chapter title 100,000 Year War. Is this referring to the Flood and the Forerunner, or something even further back? I'm not really sure, I'm just asking. Anyway, I battle a ton of Flood and then more elites show up, including the commander from earlier. He's quite charismatic. He's rallying these brave elites to show courage on a mission that is almost certainly a death sentence for them. Which brings us to Quarantine Zone, which is like Sacred Icon but with lots of vehicles. The Spectre is pretty fun to drive, but the AI operating the turret is even worse than when the human AI used the Warthogs, and that's saying something. This is a genuinely difficult vehicle section. There are a lot of Flood, and the Spectre isn't very effective against them. There is also a lot of aerial interference from giant sentinels. I got boarded more than once, and I don't remember the Flood being able to board commandeered vehicles at all. I decided to try and hijack a Wraith, but kept dying from the large sentinels and missile barrages. I ended up using the Spectre to destroy the sentinels and then grabbed a Wraith. That did the trick. Once I was in a Wraith, it was a little easier. I also found another secret cutscene. I've definitely missed quite a few. I got to use a Scorpion at the end, which of course felt much better than the Spectre and Wraith and was far more effective. I even got an achievement for using it as the Arbiter. The Commander and Arbiter rush to another gondola, but hear the cries of the Flood. The Commander says he will hold them off and rushes to battle. Tartarus makes a comment calling him a coward.
I see that coward didn't join you.
He's wrong, but he's got somewhat of a point. If anything, the Commander is taking an unnecessary risk. Why did the Elite Commander stay back? It's a floating platform. The Flood wouldn't have been able to easily get across the chasm as it is, much less reach the platform suspended in midair. I don't get it. I think the developers probably knew he just needed to not be in the next cutscene. Though it was pretty funny when the elites on the gondola call Tartarus out for calling someone a coward when he's safe in his Phantom.
What coward? Nice and safe in his Phantom. Ignore the braggart.
Zing. Tartarus interrupts the Arbiter's attempt to retrieve the index and captures Miranda Keyes and Johnson. Arbiter tells him that this is his mission and that.
And the prophets learn of this, that they will take your head when they learn. Fool. They ordered me to do it.
Betrayed by Tartarus and the prophets themselves, Arbiter plummets into the darkness. I gotta ask though, was it the prophets who ordered Tartarus to do this? Or was it truth?
What is that?
I am a monument to all your sins.
This is the infamous Gravemind scene, an incredibly iconic cinematic remastered beautifully. Master Chief and the Arbiter stare down a mass of flood matter that has taken on not only sentience, but a profound intellect. Gravemind's lines have stuck in my mind for years, as I'm sure they have with many other people. It speaks in riddles at all times. I always wondered why as a kid, kinda thought it was just meant to be deep, but now I wonder if there was intentional logic behind it. Gravemind would have needed to learn and interpret language from all different species and civilizations as it assimilated organic and technological hosts. It may speak in riddles because that's how it's able to synthesize its thoughts and communicate them across languages. Maybe. Or maybe it was just deep. Remember, although the Covenant just speak English in the cutscenes, they all have their own language that they're really speaking. It's just translated for us. I guess the developers didn't feel like using subtitles for when Cortana isn't present, though all humans in Covenant are able to understand each other. I don't know, I'm sure there's a lore reason somewhere. Anyway, Gravemind assesses both Chief and Arbiter.
This one is machine and nerve, and has its mind concluded. This one is but flesh and faith, and is the more deluded.
Once again, opposites. And Gravemind is a combination of both. It's flesh, but not faith. It's nerve, but not machine. Fate made the three foes, but...
This ring will make us brothers.
So when I was a kid, I always wondered what the deal with Gravemind was. I assumed he was a very ancient, incredibly advanced form of the Flood. And I was right, but it's more than that. I mentioned earlier that after making my first Halo video, I fell down a rabbit hole as YouTube started recommending me lots and lots of Halo content. I stumbled across something really cool. For those of you who are like me, who played the original series back in the day and fell off after Reach, or maybe even as far back as Halo 3, have you ever wondered what the Flood actually are? Where did it come from? How did it develop? I did, and I found out, and I have to say, the answer is very interesting. It's a little out there, but I like it. The Flood's origins actually recontextualize a lot of the story in a really powerful and ironic way. But I'm not going into detail in this video. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who doesn't know, but I highly recommend learning about it. Anyway, Gravemind uses the portal nexus to transport Master Chief to High Charity, and Chief spooks a grunt.
Boo!
Master Chief now needs to infiltrate the mothership to search for the index. The scenery in High Charity is incredible. The Anniversary Edition visuals really communicate that it is a massive, bustling city, while the original graphics are more muted, seeming more like a wasteland. I mentioned earlier that I really only liked the Brute Plasma Rifle for dual wielding. Gravemind is the first level you get to use it, and it feels a lot better to dual wield than other weapons. It feels like the damage is multiplicative rather than additive. Don't quote me, I don't know for sure. It has satisfying hit splats and animations despite the fact that the weapons take up 2/3 of the screen. The Brute Plasma Rifle is really strong when dual wielding. It shreds the enemies quickly and is particularly effective against the brutes themselves, especially when aimed at the head. Master Chief continues to make his way through High Charity, and it quickly becomes evident that he is not the only enemy present. Violence has broken out within the Covenant, and a civil war has begun.
You might consider sitting this one out.
It's interesting thinking from Chief's point of view. He has little context for any of this. One second he's fighting against a unified Covenant on Delta Halo's surface, and the next he's witnessing their dissension into unrest. Honestly, it's just such a cool level. Truth's ruthlessness is really shown off at the end of this level. Mercy is attacked by a Flood infection form. Tartarus reaches to help him, but...
Let him be. The great journey waits for no one, brother. Not even you.
Even Tartarus seems to hesitate, to question, for a moment, but he quickly follows orders and moves on. Again, what is Truth's angle? What is he trying to accomplish? My only guess is he believes he can singularly fill a power vacuum when the Great Journey begins. He definitely sees himself as above even his fellow prophets. Arbiter finds himself transported to a cliffside overlooking a massive structure. He finds hostile brutes, bugs, and jackals as he fights through to find his allies. I mentioned earlier that there is a weapon that I found to prefer over the energy sword for melee combat. It was the Brute Shot. It's pretty hard to use effectively, but has a lot of cascading damage, and its melee attack seems to do more damage than other weapons, which fits with the blade design. Sure, the energy sword does more melee damage, but the Brute Shot has a lot more utility and can be reloaded. Uprising has some pretty tough encounters. I died a lot, especially in one section where you need to fall down levels in a weirdly designed room. I'm probably being too aggressive, but that's just how I play. Mercy tells Master Chief that Truth is returning to Earth
to finish what I started. And this time, none of you will be left behind.
But what did they start? Well, I vaguely remember, but we'll find out when I get to Halo 3. Mercy seems pretty chill for someone who has just betrayed, left to die in a horrific way, and is about to miss out on the great journey which he loved so much. These prophets are so weird. Cortana discovers that the Eiffel Tower in the middle of the city is a Forerunner ship that is actually powering all of High Charity. Master Chief makes a note that Tartarus has the index and that they're going to activate Halo. So Arbiter needs to stop Tartarus, and Master Chief needs to stop Truth from doing whatever it is he's doing. Cortana has to stay behind in case the mission fails, in which case she'll blow everything up within Amberclad's engines.
Not a very original plan, but we know it'll work.
High Charity is a freaky level. It's very dark, not just visually, but thematically too. This city is being consumed by the Flood, and it's happening fast. The corridors are filled with Covenant and Flood, and the bugs are the most annoying out of the bunch. The weapons I want to use just are not very effective against them, and there's always a swarm. Cortana references that the ship's systems are fighting back against her.
I'll do what I can to slow the launch sequence. There's something inside the ship, a presence, fighting back. For a Covenant construct, it's unusually formidable.
Knowing what I know now, I'm wondering if it's an AI that possibly originated within the Forerunner ship. The Forerunner were big into AI. The final room actually took a good few tries to get there. I think I'm just intended to rush to the end, but I like to fight my way through it. The Flood forces seemed endless though. High Charity ends with another incredibly iconic cutscene. Master Chief rides an energy beam into the Forerunner ship. He lands in what appears to be an engine exhaust or a burner? I'm not sure, but it doesn't seem like the safest place to be. Another line plays that is deeply rooted in my memory.
Chief, when you get to Earth, good luck.
After I'm through with truth.
Don't make a girl a promise if you know you can't keep it.
I always found this line weird as a kid, and it still feels weird. Cortana is an AI, but she definitely has emotions and obviously has a personality. This is because Cortana is a clone of her creator's brain. This is another lore thing that I learned while I was navigating the rabbit hole. There's a lot of cool stuff in it. Weird as it may be, it's actually foreshadowing a key plot point in Halo 3. The Forerunner ship disengages from High Charity, takes off, and presumably the city loses the majority of its power in an instant. Oops. We return to the Arbiter for the final level in the game. He joins his fellow elite, the Grunts, and the flippin' Hunters to lay siege to the control center of Delta Halo. I mean, that's just so cool. The Scarab cutscene has even more of Johnson's incredible lines.
Listen, you don't like me and I sure as hell don't like you. But if we don't do something, Mr. Mohawk's gonna activate this ring, and we're all gonna die.
Johnson pilots the Scarab while Arbiter flies a Banshee to support him. This final Banshee section is just so iconic and incredible. I really have used the word iconic a lot in this video, and there's a reason for that. Halo 2 is an iconic game, maybe the most iconic game of the series. Johnson blows open the door to the control center, and Arbiter enters the wreckage. There's a couple quick fights before a cutscene. The Arbiter pleads with Tartarus, tries to make him see the truth.
The sacred rings, what are they?
Weapons of last resort, built by the Forerunners to eliminate potential flood hosts, thereby rendering the parasite harmless.
And those who made the rings? What happened to the Forerunners?
After exhausting every other strategic option, my creators activated the rings. They and all additional sentient life in 3 radii of the galactic center died as planned. Would you like to see the relevant data?
Tartarus, the prophets have betrayed us.
Tartarus refuses in anger, in rejection of reality. But the fact is that truth forsook even him, and unbeknownst to Tartarus, truth is heading for safety. Question: does truth know what's going to happen? I can't remember enough of Halo 3 to answer that question at this point. So we're at the final boss fight. Once again, it's really easy, though it did take a few tries due to one-shot mechanics. All it took was a good few lunges at the right times, and Tartarus went down. Everything about the final cutscene is, well, iconic. Like all of it. Miranda Keyes does some parkour so she can remove the index and stop the activation of the rings. 343 Guilty Spark talks about how the Halo array is ready for remote activation from the Ark, a lead into Halo 3.
And where, Oracle, is that?
We then cut back to Master Chief, who has arrived in the Forerunner ship back to Earth's orbit. The Admiral questions why Chief is on that ship, to which he responds,
Sir, finishing this fight.
Which ended up being the marketing slogan for Halo 3. Meanwhile, Gravemind has now infected all of High Charity and is having a conversation with Cortana.
I will ask, and you will answer.
All right. Shoot.
Halo 2 is a truly incredible game. It has a great story, nuanced, and with compelling characters. The gameplay is fantastic, even if dual wielding was a bit of a disappointment. It's an all-time classic, and potentially one of the best games I've ever played. Maybe one of the best games ever made. Having just recently replayed Halo Combat Evolved in its anniversary form, I have to say Halo 2 is better. A lot of comments on my Halo Anniversary video said that Halo 2 Anniversary was a massive step in the right direction, and they were right. Halo 2 is probably the best game in the series. I have a lot of core memories in Halo Combat Evolved, and I have a lot of great memories of Halo 3, but neither have stuck in my mind so consistently and so vividly as Halo 2. Thanks so much for watching.